Well, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome in from across the continent and beyond for another exciting Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants broadcast. There's quite a few of you that are new to us today, and so if you are joining us for the first time, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And you're catching us in a really exciting day because today, in earnest, we begin our epic month celebrating and showcasing the most kick-ass women in science on planet Earth. We've got almost 50 broadcasts this month with everything from Egyptologists to paleontologists, coral reef conservation, and more. I just wrapped up a minute ago with Eugenie Jacobson talking about Arctic expeditions, and now we are going to the complete opposite end of the frozen wasteland spectrum with some live epic intelligence of plants programming. So I'm bringing in Lauren Erland for the third time she's joined us on the broadcast, and we partnered with her a few months ago, and we were scheduling this whole epic month with amazing women, and I was like, Lauren, you've got to be our first person. Like, come on in. And we just snuck in one other person ahead of you, but you were the first person booked for this because Lauren talks about a topic that most people don't know much about in one of the most engaging ways humanly possible. So I'm so excited for you to meet her. I'm going to zip my lip. And Lauren, welcome back to the program. I'm so excited to hear more, and take us away with the intelligence of plants.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jesse. That is the nicest introduction, and I am so excited to be here with you all today. I am just going to get my slides up because I want to start with a question for all of you. Ooh. So, Jesse, can you see that?
We're up. Do you think plants are intelligent?
So, I think that the title of this talk might have given this away a little bit, but from the audience, what do you think? Do you think plants are intelligent? I want to start and figure out where everyone's at before we get into this.
Wow, Miss Copeland's class of our live group on StreamYard's like an enthused yes. We even got an exclamation mark. Now, they might be biased by your talk title. I would say that, like, when I was a kid, I would have said no. Like, plants are these mindless things that the animals go and munch on. And I'm glad that in our last talk and this one, the tide is shifting. But tell us more.
Yes. I mean, and Jess, you know what? I'll be honest and say I probably would have answered the same way as you when I was a kid. So I think everyone on this stream is probably a little bit farther ahead than I am even. So you are all right. I think that plants are intelligent. And the best way to start thinking about what this actually means and to answer this question is to think about first, what is intelligence? So if you look around you and you think about, what makes something smart? How do you define that? It's actually a really hard thing to define, right? And so we can go and we can kind of pull out of the dictionary a few different ways to understand and define what intelligence is. And we can talk about, it's your ability to acquire and apply knowledge, to use skills, to have behaviors, to learn, to solve problems, the general ability to reason, problem solve, and learn. If we think about this, sometimes I wonder if we could even apply this to everyone we know in our lives. But plants, we can actually show you, and I'm going to give you some examples about why plants can meet all of these criteria. So I think one of the big things that comes out of this for me is really when we think about this like knowledge, skills, problem solving part of things. And so can plants solve problems? Can plants understand information? Can plants make decisions? And what that all comes down to is really, do plants have senses? Do plants have behaviors? And so I want to just do another quick little poll from everyone. How many senses do you think plants have? So we've got 5.
Yep.
How many do you think plants have?
What's funny for me as we're waiting for the answers to pour in is that the last time I had this exact question, it was in relation to sharks, and we found out that they had 7, and it was like mind-blowing. Like, what do sharks, how do they view the world? But let's see on YouTube and beyond. 3 senses, say Miss Copeland's class. We've got 6 on YouTube. We've got, I don't know, we've got Shots in the Dark 4 on YouTube. Let's see what else. Yeah, okay, so 3, 6, 4, 1. Tell it all over the place.
No one wants to give plants more senses than sharks. I'm a little bit disappointed, but sharks, I guess, are kind of cool. But hopefully we'll all be able to, on the next slide, decide that plants are in fact cooler than sharks, because plants actually have more than 13 senses. So when we talk about senses in plants, or we talk about behaviors in plants, we actually, as plant scientists, call these tropisms. So what can plants sense? Well, plants can sense light. They can sense magnetic fields. They can sense gravity. They can sense touch. They can smell. They can see. They can feel. But they can do all these other things around them. Because if you think about a plant, you and I, if we're uncomfortable, if we're upset, or our environment isn't quite right, someone's turned down the thermostat, we can't find our blanket, we can get up and go to another room. We can get up, walk away, grab a blanket, turn up the thermostat, get ourselves a glass of water. Plants can't do any of that. Plants are stationary for the most part. And so plants need to have a really, 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 really highly attuned senses so that they can understand their environment in the finest detail, so they can make the decisions to not only be able to survive, but just like thrive in their environments. If we look all around us, how many plants are really thriving? So plants have more than 13 senses, which I think is just mind-boggling. And so I want to give you some examples of these. So plants can see. So this is what we would call, in terms of tropisms, phototropism, scototropism, or heliotropism. So photo is light, scoto is dark, and helio is actually when you follow the sun. So if you think about sunflowers in your garden, how they turn as the day goes on, this is what this is. So I've got a little video here I'm going to share with you. So these are germinating seeds, and we can see the light is coming from, on my screen, the left-hand side of the screen at the beginning. And so the plants, the little seedlings, they germinate, they're growing towards the light because that's where they get their food from. Now we see the light switched, and you see the plants move really, really quickly towards where that light source is moved away from. So if we watch this again, there they go. So plants can see. I think this is an amazing example of how quickly plants can see and respond. This is, of course, a sped up time lapse of this, but you can see just how sensitive they are. They're not, within an hour, they've completely shifted their direction of light. And you might have seen this if you grew plants on your windowsill at home. You'll see that they move towards the light, and you maybe have to rotate them so they don't get tippy and fall off of your shelves, like Jesse was telling me about before this broadcast. Okay, so I think we've established now plants can see. Plants can also smell, and not just smell, I think they can shout. So if you're a plant hanging out, what is the biggest kind of hazard to you? Like, what's the thing that's gonna get rid of you the quickest? Does anyone want to take a guess at what your biggest danger is as a plant hanging out in a field?
We might have a few little pictures of them on the left side of the screen there, but if one of you wants to chime in, bugs! That would be my scariest thing. Like, caterpillars at the micro scale, like if you look at them in the face, are terrifying monsters that are eating your body. So I wouldn't really want that. That seems like the winner, and that's been our answer so far. So let's see if we're all right.
Okay, so bugs, yes, or anything that's going to come and eat you. So cows, people, deer, bugs, because you can get eaten really, really quickly, right? And so if you're being eaten, you want to know that. And so plants can actually do two things. They can actually make these little distress calls. So if I'm being nibbled by an insect, I can make a distress call. And if I'm a big tree, I can send that call from my very, very lowest branches somewhere near the ground to, hundreds of feet up in the air to tell my other parts of myself that we are being eaten, we are under attack, it is time to arm ourselves. But the other thing that plants can do is that they can send that signal because it's going through the air. Other plants can hear it. And so there's a little bit of debate because sometimes scientists don't all agree all at once, just like everyone else, whether these are plants that are eavesdropping in and they're hearing a plant shouting within itself, and it's another plant nearby says, wait, what's that? I think that I hear that the bugs are coming. And then the plants will start to arm themselves that are in the regions nearby. Or there's actually people who have suggested that plants are shouting out to their neighbors and saying, hey, if we all arm ourselves, then we're all better protected against the bugs. The bugs have nowhere to go, and we can all survive better. So plants can actually communicate with each other through these kind of smells that they send out into their atmosphere, and then they respond to that and they make changes so they can survive. And some of the things they'll do that I think are just like totally crazy is plants will actually start making, for example, poisons in their leaves. And they'll say, oh, I've got insects that are feeding on me. I'm going to make this poison. And it's going to make me taste bad. It's going to poison the bugs. It's going to slow them down. And then, if you kill enough caterpillars, the caterpillars start to learn that they don't want to eat that plant anymore. And the other thing that I think is just absolutely bananas is that not only can plants talk to each other, but plants can actually talk to other forms of life. So plants can actually shout out to insects and they can recruit backup. So if I'm a plant, this is a picture of a tomato plant, it's being eaten by little bugs, I can shout out and say, hey, other bugs that will eat these caterpillars, things like parasitoids or larger flies that will come and kill those caterpillars. They'll say, hey, I've got a really great meal for you here. I don't want to be eaten, but you don't like to eat me. I don't like this caterpillar that's eating me. You like to eat that caterpillar. Come for a feast. And the plants will actually shout out to insects that are around them to come and eat those caterpillars and pests that are on them. Can you imagine being able to like talk to insects?
Truly.
Like this is the equivalent of that. It's just mind-blowing.
It is mind blowing. I want to harp on this for 2 seconds before we go to the next slide. Like, just think about that. Imagine you're like, you're eating some plants and the plants set off a thing that attracts a tiger to come eat you. Like, that's the equivalent, but for insects. And it's wild. Like, it's so freaking cool. I love it. That's all.
Jesse, I need to use more tiger examples. That is what I've just learned from this. Amazing. And it can also be, just to like put a fine point on this, it's not just shouting for, help, I need backup, I'm being eaten. Plants can also attract other insects in a good way. So if you think about, why does this flower smell good, right? Like, it's not just because we like flowers and we think they're pretty. I mean, that's a fun bonus, but plants make flowers that smell good so that they can attract insects. They can attract their pollinators, bees and bats and birds and flies and all the different pollinators. And if you think about, some flowers smell beautiful, some smell like rotting meat. And that's because those plants are speaking to specific animals and insects to say, you are what I need so that I can make seeds and I can, reproduce. And again, I think that that's just crazy. I put a picture here of a Hoya plant from my house, because if anyone's had a Hoya plant in your house that's flowered, they actually smell terrible. But if they're targeting their specific pollinators, the moths and the flies that pollinate them, those are the languages that those insects actually speak. So the plants are mimicking them. And I'll give you an example of a Hoya a little bit later as well, that I think is really, really cool when we talk about how plants can feel. So we can see, we can smell, we can talk. And now here's an example of how we can feel. So this is called thigmotropism. And this is an example of a mimosa plant or a sensitive plant. So these plants, this is real time. This isn't sped up. You touch the bottom of the leaves and you see that the rest of the leaf starts to fold all of its leaves in. So why would a plant do this? This is really, really fast. When we think about plants, we think about plants being like stationary. They can't move. They can't run away. But plants can actually move really quickly when they choose to in some cases. And in this example with a mimosa plant, what's happening is, they're maybe not so worried about me coming along and touching them for fun because I think it's cool when they move. But when something touches them, they're guessing that maybe I'm a caterpillar. And so what they do is they close up all their leaves. And by closing up all my leaves, one, maybe you just knock the caterpillar off. I've gone from this like nice, inviting platform that I can hang out and chill on, have a little snack on some leaves, to like a slippery slide, like the edge of a knife that I can't stay on, and it just knocks the caterpillar off. It also makes it harder to eat those leaves because they're all mushed up in a little tiny bunch versus a nice buffet salad for us. And so this is, I think, one of the kind of simplest examples of plants moving. But plants also can make a decision. So in the case of that mimosa plant, we touched the plant, all the leaves closed up. But if you keep touching that plant, it will stop closing its leaves because you've touched it and it closed up, but nothing bad happened. And you touched it and closed up and nothing bad happened. And every time a plant decides to move, it costs energy. And plants don't want to be wasteful with their energy. It takes a lot of time and effort to build all those sugars that they need to make those movements. And so if you keep touching it, eventually the plant will be like, nah, it's just Lauren. She's bored. She keeps touching my leaf because she thinks it's cool when I close. And so plants, all sorts of different plants do this. So I'm going to give you an example here. I think this is Jesse's favorite, and it's one of my favorites too, which is of a Venus flytrap. So if we think about carnivorous plants often move quite quickly, right? Because they're trying to catch insects to eat them. And so we've got kind of our plant mouth here. This is the Venus flytrap, the actual trap of it where it's going to capture the fly. And you'll see that there's a little stick in this image, and there is a little tiny hair that it's touching. So when Venus flytraps decide to close, they make a very specific decision. So we're going to watch it once. We're going to see what happens, and then we're going to talk about it, and then we're probably going to watch it again because it's so cool. So there's the hair. The stick has touched the hair, no movement. It's going to touch it a second time, and now the Venus flytrap is actually closing its trap. So what is happening here? So if you think about what happens when a fly ends up in a Venus flytrap, you're not going to have a fly kind of land and just stay put. But if you think about maybe like a piece of another leaf or a little bit of dirt landing on it, that would land on the trap. It would touch the hair maybe once, and then it would just stay put. If a fly is in there, in contrast, the fly is going to be kind of wandering around. Maybe it's shaking, maybe it's wiggling, maybe it's moving its wings. It's going to hit those hairs, those sensor hairs, those little feeling receptors inside that trap multiple times. And so what the plant is doing is it's actually waiting to see, is this just a piece of dirt that's fallen on me that I don't care about? Or is this something that sounds like lunch? And so if it's lunch, it's probably going to move around a couple times, and then I'm going to put in the effort to close my trap, and I'm going to start making all of the digestive fluids and juices that I need to eat my lunch. So let's watch it one more time with that in mind. Okay, so we touch the hair once, no movement. We see this big flash of green. This is a big signal going out. Touch it twice, and now we're closing up, and we're going to go and we're going to eat and digest our lunch. I just think that's incredible.
It is incredible.
Thank you, Jesse. Sometimes I just like can't get over it. I'd sit there and watch that all day probably if I was allowed to. I'll note, if you have a Venus flytrap at home and you close the trap too many times, you will tire your plant out and it will start to drop off its trap. So be careful how many times you do it, even though it's the best. And then I just wanted to give you one other example. This isn't really a sense, but it is, I think, a superpower. So we've got this African violet that might look like something you have at home. Did you know that plants can not only sense their environment very finely, but they can respond, not just like that Venus flytrap, but they can respond and change the way that their body looks entirely. They can be like transformers. And so what plants have the capacity to do that we will never be able to do is that every single cell in the body of a plant can actually become any other type of the plant. So I can have this African violet here that's maybe sitting in my house, and that leaf, I could take a cutting off that leaf, or this little tiny stem of the leaf, our petiole here, and I in the lab can do this, or the plant in nature can do this. It can start making new leaf. So we have a stem that turns into a leaf. We can also have a stem turn into a root. So this would be like having like our legs growing out of our head or our arms. So you can see this is, again, the brown is the little stem, and all of the white are roots that are growing out of it. We can also, oh, there's our little root. I put an arrow. Look at me go. We can also take a stem and we can grow a whole new baby just out of the stem. So plants can actually make whole new embryos that don't have to involve any kind of sexual reproduction at all. They can grow a whole new embryo out of the stem as well. And so you can see these here. There's 3, 4, 5 of them here. And so plants are really, really fine-tuned in understanding what's going on around them, and then they can completely transform themselves to kind of meet the needs of that environment. And so the way that they do this is using signals. So just like us, plants have neurotransmitters and they have nerve pulses. So they have those action potentials that we have. So this is an example. Again, our little caterpillars are back. This is going to be a video that's going to show a caterpillar. It's going to come and munch on some leaves. And then there's a special dye that the scientists who've made this video have used that makes the plant light up when these signals are sent. So we're going to just watch this here. We've got the caterpillar. It comes, it munches the leaf, and you can see all the veins, all the vasculature in those leaves glow green. And this is the plant saying, oh my gosh, help, help, I'm being eaten. Prepare ourselves, prepare ourselves. And so you can see, again, you've got the caterpillar. It comes and munches the leaves. And that bright, bright green that we see, those are those nerve waves, those neurotransmitters, the calcium signals, the electrical signals. Plants use all of these, and the plants can use this to make a decision about how they grow next. And so just like us, I said they have neurohormones, and maybe you don't believe me, but we have things like melatonin, serotonin, adrenaline, and dopamine all in us. You've probably heard about some of these. But in plants, they don't do things like make you sleepy, make you happy, make you nervous, make you feel lovey. Instead, these hormones are how plants are sensing their environment. They're saying, this is stressful. I'm being eaten. Oh my goodness, there's not enough water here. We need to adjust. We need to reallocate the way we're making our decisions. We need to grow roots out of our head or leaves out of our roots so that we can best grow in our environment. Plants also have lots of other hormones. And I think the best example of this that you have maybe seen if you've done any gardening in your yard is something called auxin. So if you've used rooting powder to grow new plants, that is auxin. And auxin is our kind of big hitter in the plant hormone world. And this is an example. This was actually done by Darwin, like 100+ years ago. And he found that, we've got auxin in plants that lets the plant understand where the sun is. And so the auxin will always accumulate in the direction part of the plant where the sun is. And so if the sun is straight above us, you'll see a big amount of auxin in the top and the plant will grow up. If we remember back to that video in the beginning where the plants were bending, that's the auxin moving to one side or the other, and the plant kind of follows that hormone there. So it says the signal is going this way. I'm going to readjust my growth. I'm going to change the way I'm making my decisions so that I can point myself more to the sun so I can make more sugars and I can grow big, strong, luscious leaves. And so this is all the research that I do. This is what I'm really excited about. This is what I love, is that knowing how plants understand their environment can help us to understand how to do in the future and protect them as we have all these crazy climate change effects. And Jesse said at the beginning that you went from the Arctic to the opposite end of the world, but I'm going to take us right back to the Arctic because the Arctic is actually a lush jungle full of all sorts of plants. They're just all in micro scale. And these plants are incredibly amazing in the way they sense their environment. They've got 24-hour light. They've got cool temperatures. They've got all sorts of animals fighting to eat them. And so I'll just leave it at that and say, we have so many cool plants in the world. And I hope if nothing else you take out of this, you go outside and you appreciate a plant today. And I am super happy to answer questions.
Well, Lauren, first and foremost, I just want to highlight for our students, if you're as interested in anything in your life as Lauren is about plants, you're set. Like, it doesn't matter if it's sports or art or plants or cool animals or space or whatever. You're so passionate and so spectacular. So thank you so much for that. And I'm glad you mentioned the Arctic thing and hold my feet to the fire, because we actually have Arctic botanists come on all the time to talk about how cool they are. So I'm remiss. So Paul Sokolov, if you're watching this in the Museum of Nature, Arctic plants are the best, not a wasteland, as I said at the beginning. Before we dive in with Q&A, we're going to do a little bit of a Kahoot together. So we had a teacher ask about this in the chat, and I had to pull this up because it's a 4-question quiz for those who are new to Kahoot. The faster our audience answers, the more points you get. And what you win is Lauren and I's everlasting respect. So Lauren, if you want to help us out with any of these answers, I'm going to give our classes just a chance here to get into the Kahoot. If you're new to this, it's just kahoot.it. You pull up that game pin. And if you just want to yell out the answers in your class, that's totally fine as well. But we are going to dive in a second and see what we think about some cool plant things, including some of the things we've learned today. So I'm going to start us off. We've got a couple dolphins to begin. Keep coming in. And we'll dive in with some cool plant stuff. All right.
Amazing.
3, 2, 1. And then Miss Copeland's class, if you go and share in the chat, we've already got a bunch on YouTube. Keep those questions coming in. We'd love to hear from you. The more, the merrier. All right. This isn't so much an intelligent thing as it's just a cool thing that everybody should know. The tallest tree in the world can reach how high? 50 feet, 100 feet, 200 feet, or over 300 feet. Any hints for us, Lauren?
They're taller than you think?
I was going to say, it's hard to give a hint for that. I'm so used to saying that as a query. But yes, they're monsters. And almost everyone got this right. Like coast redwoods and sequoias and some eucalypts and maybe more can get over 300 feet, which is crazy and insane. And I love it. Very neat.
Yeah, imagine trying to talk to all your limbs that far away.
Well, so one of the things on that note, when you're 300 feet high, pumping the water up to the top of you is like an incredible, unbelievable effort. And the amount of water that goes up one of those trees is it's almost astronomical. It's just fantastic. So great job.
Magic. Some might call it magic.
I think so. Adorable Turtle takes our lead as we go to question 2. How many senses do plants have? We covered this. Is it 5, 1, 13, or 143? I know we covered a lot when we went into detail. So you might be thinking 143, perhaps not that many, but it is more than we thought at the beginning, which is great. And there's so many of you in the Kahoot now. Way to go. Okay, let's see. All right, 2, 1, 32 answers in. Who was paid? Yes, it's 13. Way to go. And maybe we'll find more as we go along. That's the joy of plant research, is that in a lot of cases, we're still on the cutting edge. There's more to be discovered, which is great.
That's
All
true.
right.
I might have accepted 143.
That keep that in mind. Plants have been around for how long? How long have we had plants? 7 million years, about as long as people ancestors. We have no idea. 240 million years, as old as dinosaurs, or approximately 450 million years, as old as those sharks that we talked about earlier. I don't know why I keep referencing sharks in this plant program, but I do, and I'm
I'm
not
gonna have to
sorry.
go find some shark scientists.
So a few of you thought no idea, which is really good. I'm glad you thought that maybe that was like a source of ignorance for us. We do have some fossils of early plants. And so plants came on land before anything else. And I'm not wrong, Lauren. It's about 450 million years, maybe a little before that, something in that range.
Ish.
Yeah, ish.
I do more of the living plants than the fossil plants.
And the dead fossil ones. Fair enough. Head to your local museum. In fact, we're doing paleontology in like a week. So if you want to learn more about that, you can. I'm trying to move my mouse to press the next question, and my mouse has decided that it hates me. But there we go. Okay, cool. Final question. And where are places plants can't live? We sort of hinted at this a little bit with our Arctic plants at the end. Can they not live in deserts? Can they not live in the tundra? Can they not live underwater? Or can they live everywhere, which is none of the above? Pretty much.
My hint is I do have a fish tank behind me, and I'm a plant person, so...
By the way, before you even got underway, I was tempted to ask what was in that, so we will cover that in a minute. But yes, none of the above. Plants, I mean, they don't live at the bottom of the deep sea, and they don't live in like negative 120. But other than that, plants are everywhere. Like plants, life will find a way, as they said in Jurassic Park, and it is especially true for our plant cousins. All right, let's see what our leaderboard is, and then we are going to take our questions. YouTubers have already asked a bunch of great ones. Miss Copeland, please do share in the chat. We'll take as many as we can. Friendly eagle, adorable eagle, and for all the marbles. Let's see, is it another eagle? No, it's Swift Dolphin. All right, if you are any of those folks, let us know who you are in the chat, and way to go. Lauren, we've got one of my favorite phrased questions of all time from Cookie. Cookie wants to know, is the smell of freshly cut grass a distress call?
Yes.
Yes.
100%. I love that question. When you are out mowing your lawn, you are stressing out your lawn to the maximum, and it is screaming. I'm sorry. I think it's a good excuse to not go mow the lawn. Tell your parents.
Leave it constantly. You know what? I wish I haven't seen a lawn in a long time. We got like 5-foot snowdrifts in my front yard. So I'm one day in a few months, we'll see the lawn again. All right. Let's see. Miss Wilson's class. Abby wants to know, why can't we hear the plants? So I guess when they're moving, can we not hear them? And can they hear things that are going on in the world? So we'll take all of references of hearing for plants.
Amazing. Okay. I love that question. And to answer it, we have to think about what is sound. So sound is actually just vibrations that we have kind of adapted to be able to hear a certain frequency of them, and our brains turn them into kind of words and thoughts and sounds that we hear, right? But plants are really, really sensitive. They can feel all of those vibrations around them. So yes, plants can hear, they can sense those vibrations. And, you know, you kind of see these flashy articles like, oh, plants prefer opera music or plants hate metal music. But, you know, what you're really talking about when we talk about plants hearing is plants sensing those sound waves, those vibrations. And those sensitive hairs that I showed you on the Venus flytrap, plants will have little hairs all over their surface that can sense vibrations like that. So yes, plants can hear sounds in kind of the sensation of those vibrations, but they might not have that preference of, you know, opera music versus heavy metal versus pop. Though, you know, maybe we do need to do a controlled study on the benefits of Taylor Swift music to plant growth. I'm just throwing it out there. If anyone wants to fund that, come talk to me.
I'll stress, if you want to check out Lauren's amazing lab, berrylab.com has lots more. And I will stress too, if you're keen on plants after this, The Green Planet on BBC and the book The Light Eaters by Zoe Schlonger are just spectacular. So some great resources to keep the learning going. We've got like a classic question, Lauren, which is, why are plants green? From Miss Copeland's class. Do tell.
I haven't had this question before, and I love it. So why are plants green? So plants are green because of the pigment chlorophyll that they accumulate in their leaves. And the reason why it's green is it's targeting a certain spectrum, a certain wavelength of light that's really good for kind of harvesting and using to make their sugars, and that's red light. So if you think about the color wheel, if you think, I think most of us have seen an artist color wheel. If you want to think about opposites on that color wheel, you want to kind of think about the pigment being the opposite color of the wavelength of light that it's absorbing. So plants use a lot of red light to make their sugars, to do photosynthesis and make energy, and the green is the opposite on that spectrum. So your pigment is absorbing all of the red light, and so you've got kind of this green colored pigment, and that's why plants are green.
Fantastic. You actually covered a question from Preston online too, which is, can plants see color? So it's a bit of yes, because it helps them live and exist in the world. So great job, guys. All right, Lauren, a classic question. What is your favorite plant? And is there such a thing? And do you shun such a question?
Oh, everyone always asks me this question, and I never have a good answer for it. It's so hard because I love all of the plants. So today, because we've been talking about my fish tank, I'm going to answer a little bit differently than usual. So in my fish tank, there's actually this plant that is called a lace plant. And I'm kind of super obsessed about it right now because I just got my aquarium and I got my plant in it. And this plant is the only plant in the world that makes its leaves as whole leaves, but then it intentionally, in a very specific pattern, kills a bunch of the cells in its leaves so that it looks like a window screen. And it does this on purpose. So it takes all the energy, it makes like a whole solid arm, and then it decides, I'm going to kill every other cell in that arm, so that now I've got like a net. And the part of the reason why it does this, we think, is because it grows in really fast moving rivers. And so this reduces the water resistance against the leaf, and so the water can flow through it. And so lace plants, I think, are going to be my plant of the day. But I always have to mention I'm a berry researcher, so I do love berries quite a bit. So don't hold it against me, berries. But I think today's answer is the lace plant.
So I'm trying to find a cool picture of this, and I will if we do a nice longer question for everyone. But they're so cool. I've seen lace plants before. I didn't know the backdrop of the story, but you'll see on like mountain passes where winds get really high, they'll actually cut holes in like the signs as they stop and stuff, so that the wind doesn't just blow the sign over. So it's the same principle and really, really cool. And insofar as you care what I think of plants, I got a sequoia seed, and sequoias are my favorite plant because they're ridiculous and they're like 10 times bigger than a blue whale, which makes them one of the biggest things to ever exist on planet Earth ever. So that's your plug of the day from a random person about liking plants. But the lace plants,
I think it's the hardest plant. It's the hardest question anyone will ever ask. How do you pick it?
Listen, for all biologists too and zoo folks, we get favorite animal all the time. So it's like, it's innately tricky. So well done, guys. All right, Miss Copeland's class. How do plants breathe underwater? Very fitting for our lace plant. Do tell.
Ooh, such a good question. So not even something that you would necessarily think of. So if you think about water actually has dissolved CO2 in it. So plants breathe carbon dioxide, not oxygen. They're actually opposite to us. And so the dissolved CO2 in the water is actually what they're able to use. And so if you think about this, those fast moving rivers are actually an advantage because it's churning up the air and the water lots and lots and lots, and you get lots of dissolved oxygen and CO2 and gases in that water. So that's how plants can manage to kind of breathe underwater. It's also why if you've got really like stagnant, not moving little pond, you'll tend to see a lot of algae, but not a lot of plants in it.
Yeah. Very cool, Lauren. Thank you so much. And I just pulled up, if it deigns to work for me, a picture of a lace plant, which are so cool. I just love them. Like, they're so magnificent. It's such a weird thing. So
they're beautiful.
Good pick du jour. All right. Xander in Miss Wilson's class wants to know any cool facts about moss. Can you tell us about moss? What's the deal? Lay it on us.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I don't even know where to start. Moss is pretty cool. I have to admit, I also have moss in my fish tank. It's pretty amazing. The really cool thing about moss is that I think moss doesn't actually have any of the vascular structure that normal plants have. So Jesse was talking about pumping all that water up through all the xylem and using the xylem and the phloem to transport all your nutrients and everything through it. Moss doesn't have any of that. And if you think about how big mosses can grow, it manages to sort that out with any kind of formalized transport structure without, like, think about if you had like a neighborhood without any roads. How would you get everything to all of those houses? Moss have found a way to be able to do that without any of those roads. And so I think that's pretty phenomenal in terms of mosses. And ferns actually are the same. So I know you asked about mosses, but I'm going to pivot because if you think about how big a fern can get, they do the same thing. And so I think that's kind of one of my fun moss facts.
It is a fun moss fact. I love ferns. They're one of my favorite things in the whole world. And like they were like the big thing back in the dinosaur era. Like a lot of plants that we think of and take for granted today did not exist back then, but ferns were everywhere and they rock and they're super cool. So great question, guys. Quick dispelling of a myth, by the way. Moss, does it only grow on the north side of the tree, Lauren, or not at all?
Oh, well, okay, good question. The answer, the reason why we kind of think about that is two things. One is sun directions and two is wind can both impact that. So the answer is it depends on where you are. Plants like to be on the sunny side of things because that's how they get their energy to make their sugars. Plants don't like to be on the windy side of things because that dries them out, it makes it colder, and it's harder to live. So
I like the nuance. Thank you so much. Lauren, we've got time for just a couple more questions because time flies when you're having fun in these broadcasts. So we're going to wrap up with one from D'Angelo, who wants to know how plants survive in the desert, which is a great question. And if you want to give us some examples, because desert plants are some of the best ever, please do.
Desert plants are really cool, and surviving the desert is incredibly hard because we all think about the desert and we think it's super, super dry. And yes, that's true. But the other thing that happens in the desert is it's got huge temperature swings. So if you think about, super hot in the daytime, but super cold at night, that's like so hard to live in. I don't think I would make it for like more than a couple days. And so plants have evolved a whole bunch of really, really cool adaptations to that. So one of the things is if you think about desert plants, you might expect them to all be super dry, but instead, if you think like, what does a cactus look like? What does a succulent look like? They're all really, really juicy plants. And so plants kind of have evolved their own water bottles to kind of store all of this water in their tissues. Plants also in the desert are very tough skinned. Like if you think about what they feel like, they're really waxy, they're really thick. And so that's another protection mechanism to basically wrap themselves in a plant version of like a bag to keep that moisture in. And a lot of them also tend to be really spiky. So, if you turn yourself into a convenient little water bottle for yourself, the animals are going to figure that out too. So you need to find a way to stop other animals who are looking for water from eating you as well. So those are a couple cool examples, I think. But plants have done some other crazy things. Like if you look up the resurrection plant, there are plants that are actually able to completely dry out. They'll look completely dead. They're just like a brown ball. And they can just wait like that until there's water. So if it's really unfavorable, there's no water out, they just go dormant. They shut themselves down and they say, I'm just sleeping until conditions get better. And then when it rains, the plant will turn from this kind of dry brown ball and it'll start growing, and it'll become big, lush green plant. And then it can go through that cycle as many times as it wants. So check out resurrection plants.
They are so cool. I was actually pulling up another name of one on that exact note, but resurrection plants, amazing. And then Welwitschia is just my sort of go-to example as a nerdy Latin name for a really, really cool organism. So I can't encourage you to check it out enough. Awesome. Great question, guys. All right. And then last but not least from Miss Copeland's class, our grade 9 crew, what's the white stuff in dandelion stems? And if you want to speak to like seed dispersal in general, it's such a cool topic. I love it.
I honestly, these are some of like the best questions I have got. You guys are all amazing. So what is the white stuff on dandelions? This is actually basically little parachutes. So dandelions have their seeds and they have the little tiny seeds and they're the little brown thing at the bottom that attaches kind of to that dandelion head that'd be left after you blow all your seeds off. And it has a stem and then the little white tuft at the top is actually just like designed to be a parachute. So it's made by the plants so that when you blow on it, or ideally what they're thinking about is when the wind blows on it, it will take the seeds, it will catch them on the wind, and they will float kind of away on the wind to a distance far away from the parent plant so that they can disperse their seeds into a greater area instead of having them all kind of just like plop down at the bottom of the plant and then everyone's competing against each other. If you send everyone kind of out on the wind, everyone kind of finds their own space, no one's competing with each other, and you've got a better chance of more of your seeds surviving. So amazing question.
Dandelions, we all sort of take them for granted. I'm one of the few people that just loves like a field of dandelions. Most people are like, oh, get rid of them. And it's like, no, they're gorgeous. So I'm glad we got some dandelion fans out there. And Lauren, you actually answered that pretty quickly. So I'm going to sneak in one more question because I don't know the answer to it. And I'm racking my brain. Gus wants to know, what's the biggest plant in the world that isn't a tree? No
Oh,
pressure.
well, that's very hard. I don't know that I know the answer to that. It might be something that's not a tree.
I had a
Ooh,
thought.
you've got me.
So saguaro cacti get to be like 55 feet tall, and they're gigantic. But
Yeah, I mean, are we thinking height or are we thinking like size? Because you think like lots of plants, like if you think of like trailing plants, we were talking about those
yes,
Hoyas earlier. They can kind of trail off and like create like a big mat.
yeah.
There's lots.
Hmm.
We're
This is
gonna
the
have to
joy.
get back to you on that. What a good question. You've got me
Seriously,
stumped.
Gus, you nailed it. Stump the Scientist is one of the great joys of exploring by the seat of your pants. So the fact that we end there is perfect. Lauren, before we wrap up, I've highlighted a few great resources. Honestly, there's so much on the web now. Like when I was a kid, there was not as many fantastic, amazing resources to learn about plants as there are now. So I do encourage you to check out lab websites, check out these amazing series and more. But is there any final message you want to leave us with before we say farewell to all our classes about how cool plants are and their intelligence?
Plants, yes, plants are the coolest. And if you haven't done it today or this week, go outside, look around you, find a plant, and just take a minute to appreciate it and look at all the cool things that it can do. And it was so amazing talking to you all. This was the highlight of my week.
Lauren, thank you so much. Highlight of my week too, and I can't wait to have you back for all our classes. Thank you all so much for joining, and I hope you'll catch more of us on our YouTube channel and check out more programs in our epic month entirely celebrating the coolest women in STEM on planet Earth. Bye for now, everyone. We'll see you all soon. Farewell.